Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective, continuing to give updates here about Pastor John MacArthur and his situation with the California government putting restrictions on their church and the ensuing legal battle that is taking place. There is supposed to be a court appearance today, August 24th. I did see on Twitter, legal counsel for John MacArthur, Jenna Ellis, posted this new Pastor John MacArthur files declaration in opposition of LA County's repeated attempts to close Grace Community Church. Ahead of hearing this morning, we see this action against us as an illegitimate misuse of power. So it's saying here that before this court hearing, he has filed a declaration. She links a website post here from the Thomas More Society, whose lawyers are representing Pastor MacArthur, and they actually have a link at the end of this post to the entire declaration. I'll show that for you here, and this is actually, I believe, being presented to the Superior Court of the state of California. And so this is what it is talking about here. This is submitted by Pastor John MacArthur. It gives history and background of his church ministry and the Grace to You radio and television programs. After the background information, it talks about the church's response to the pandemic, and it talks about how they actually have sought to follow and show respect and honor for the governmental authorities during this situation. Just reading a quote here in this document, a quote from Pastor MacArthur. He says, "We believe that civil disobedience is justified only when government compels us to sin or when there is no legal recourse for fighting injustice. The reason we draw the line there is simply because all the scriptural examples of civil disobedience fall squarely into those two situations. Any other kind of activism has no precedent in the Word of God and violates the spirit of Romans 13 and 1 Peter 2. So he and the elders of Grace Community Church do believe in seeking to show submission to governmental authority." He then goes on to say, "Thus, during the pandemic, Grace Community Church voluntarily turned its focus away from in-person worship to doing what it could to help the community. Although providing food and help to the needy is a core aspect of being a Christian, closing for even a short period of time was very difficult on the congregation and on Grace Community Church. The church's primary function and ministry is providing worship services, training for children, and being a literal sanctuary or refuge for the community. That primary function had been severely burdened and restricted. As a result, after being closed for in-person services for 19 weeks, the elders of Grace Community Church decided to reopen the church for in-person gatherings." And he does talk here about how they voted as an elder board unanimously to reopen the church. They published a statement explaining their decision. He talks about his statement during his sermon on Sunday, July 26, explaining the elders' position and why they were reopening the church at this time. And then after that Sunday, a law firm representing the Los Angeles County sent a letter to the church threatening the church with fines and possible imprisonment. He goes on to say later, "The worship bands appear to take the position that we should lock our doors and force our congregants to gather to worship the Lord in parking lots, in parks, or perhaps beaches, but never in any church. From Grace Community Church's perspective, this is nonsensical, and we view it as a direct ban on engaging in the worship which our faith requires. The size of our congregation means that there is no place for it to meet outdoors. The summer heat makes meeting outdoors unhealthy and even dangerous. Our experts have refuted that meeting indoors significantly aids in the spread of the coronavirus, and most principally, Grace Community Church's sanctuary itself is a spiritual refuge for our congregants, a refuge of which the county has no right to deprive them. Thus, the county's and state's July 13th and 14th worship bans burden my and Grace Community Church's free exercise of religion by criminalizing activity directly required by our faith. As a church, we have a moral and religious obligation to continue allowing our congregants to gather in our sanctuary to worship the Lord. This church is the core life for thousands from nursery to seniors. Our church is not an event center. It is a family of lives who love and care for each other in very intensely personal ways, so essential to personal well-being that people rushed back as soon as they could. The utter unnecessary deprivation of all our people by completely shutting down the mutual love and care that sustains our people in all the exigencies, pressures, and challenges of life was cruel. And after 63 years of sacrificial kindness to our city, to be repeatedly threatened with court-ordered efforts to shut Grace Community Church down when no one is sick reveals an inexplicable preference for a mostly harmless virus over the life-enriching and necessary fellowship of the church. Our leaders and congregation see no real health threat to warrant such restraint. We see this action against us as an illegitimate misuse of power. I declare under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct, executed on this 23rd day of August 2020 at Sun Valley, California. Signed, John MacArthur. So I just wanted to read that for you extensively so that you could see what his declaration was provided to the court going into the hearing today. I believe we will hear later today what happens in that court proceeding. I will leave a link to the references that I mentioned in this video and the declaration that I read portions of for you. But I know a lot of people are interested in this case and following this case, and so I just wanted to give you the latest update. And thanks, as always, for watching and listening to what I have to say from A Frisch Perspective.